Hey friends, it's Mike. It's Saturday, March 26, 2022, and I wanted to take some time out to remember Jordan Maxwell. Jordan passed away on March 23rd. He was 82 years old. I had put a post up on my community tab. And, you know, Jordan was an icon in the arena of alternative and conspiracy research. And for me and for like many of you, he was a huge piece of my awakening. And I remember going back years ago, watching his lectures on YouTube, not being able to get enough of his information. And that led me to create my blog, which I started back in the 2010-2011 timeframe. And then I started podcasting in April of 2014. And the knowledge that I had received from watching and listening to Jordan Maxwell was instrumental in my ability to feel comfortable in putting the blog together and then doing podcasting. And of course, he was an expert in the occult and the esoteric, in religion, and also in admiralty and maritime law. And in fact, his lectures on admiralty law got him into some hot water. He was threatened. And he told me about this story going back a number of years ago. But what happened was it was like 2 a.m. in the morning, and there was a knock on the door. And he answers the door, and they said, "Jordan Maxwell?" And he said, "Yes." And they said to him, "Stop talking about admiralty law, because if you don't, there are going to be consequences." And there was a long period of time where Jordan wouldn't talk about it. And I did ask him, that's how I know this story, why it is that he wouldn't talk about it, because I remember wanting to bring him on a show to discuss admiralty and maritime law. And he said, "No can do." And he was very concerned, based upon that little knock on the door, that his life could be in jeopardy if he continued to talk about it. So what he did after that was to continue his talks on the occult, the esoteric, symbolism, and those topics. And every once in a while, I remember he might lean into the admiralty and maritime law years after he got that little 2 a.m. visit, but he pretty much steered clear of it after that point in time. So he was talking about something that was not well received by the controllers. And I just wanted to show you something. Years ago, I bought these DVDs, and there are about, I don't know, maybe 10 of them. And they are Jordan's lectures. So you can see this one is Lucifer, Bringer of the New Age. And then Hidden in Plain Sight, Symbols All Around You. And then Key to Understanding Hidden Symbols of the Bible, Part 1 and 2. And King Solomon's Temple Exposed. And the Messiah. Moses, the Lawgiver. So Jordan and I did 4 shows together. The first one we did was back in June of 2014, and I started podcasting in April of 2014. So I was 2 months into hosting shows, and he was so instrumental in my awakening that I remember that when he agreed to come on the show, my brother was on that show as well. He is a huge fan of Jordan, and I remember just being very nervous about having him on the show. I was thinking, I'm the student, he's the master, and hopefully I sound somewhat intelligent. So we did 4 shows, and I created a playlist of Jordan shows down below. I'll put it in the description box for anybody that wants to take a listen. And aside from the shows that we did, Jordan and I connected a number of times to speak offline, and we did that via Skype. And so we had many conversations, and he talked about a lot of stuff. He liked to tell stories. He liked to talk about events and situations and circumstances that he encountered in life, and to share his knowledge. And the one thing that everybody should know is that going back to my show with him back in June of 2014, the first show I did with him, like I said, I was nervous, but as soon as we connected, he made me feel very comfortable very quickly. The first thing that struck me was that he was just a regular guy. There was no uppity air about him. He just spoke to you just like another human being, and you were going to have a conversation. And of course, that put everybody at ease. It put me at ease. And I thought that we had a great dialogue. And so I am very appreciative of everything I learned from him, and also the shows that I did with him, and as well as the conversations that we had offline. Now, with the shows that we did, I do have outtakes, because what happens is when you do a show, many times the guest and the host will speak afterwards, even though during the show we say goodbye to everybody. We will stay on, and we might talk for another half an hour. Sometimes with Jordan, it would go, an hour and a half. And there were a lot of stories that he told, and he had a very, very good sense of humor, which sometimes didn't come out in interviews, because when he did his interviews, he was very professional, and he didn't joke around. He just got his information out. But when you spoke to him one-on-one, he could be very, very funny, and he would tell some very funny stories, and he was very witty. So, I mean, he was very quick on his feet, and I remember enjoying a lot of the discussions I had with him, and I would be on the other end just listening to what he was telling me. Some of those stories, one of them, I should say, aside from the one where he got the 2 a.m. knock on the door, was he was at a conference. This is going back a long time ago, and he was at a table, and I guess they were serving dinner, and he was there, and next to him was a colonel that he knew. And he asked the colonel whether the Philadelphia experiment was real. And so Jordan asked this question with everybody else sitting at the table, and he didn't think anything of it. He just thought, well, it's a conspiracy theory, so let's ask this colonel if he knows anything about it. And when he asked the colonel turned to him and said, "Don't ever ask me that question again." And Jordan told me that was it. That was the end of the conversation, so they moved on to another topic. So I have stuff like that. There was another conversation we had where he was a fly on the wall in a meeting between Jesse Jackson and a person that was connected into organized crime. That's an interesting story. So what I'll try to do when I have time is to go through the archives, take a listen to the outtakes, and see if I can put some of this stuff together so that I can get it out there. I'm sure a lot of you would appreciate some of those stories that he was telling me. Now, Jordan had struggles in his life. One of those struggles, and it was a big one, lasted for a number of years, several years, and that is the legal issues that he was embroiled in. And just to cut to the chase here, what had happened was he entered into a contract with another party to manage his content. But what ended up happening, the way the contract was drawn up, the other party actually received the rights to his content. So his brand, so Jordan Maxwell, was a brand. And then a lot of problems ensued after that, where they were controlling what he could do, what he can say, where he can be as far as giving lectures or doing podcasts. In fact, I remember doing one show with Jordan. I don't know which one of the four it was, but we did the show. And then afterwards, he wrote me and he said, "Hey, Mike," he says, "don't be surprised if you receive an email to tell you to take the show down for legal reasons. So at that time, that's when I first found out about this whole thing with the legal issues. And I said, why would somebody take it down? What are you talking about? And he explained to me what was happening. And evidently, at that time, going back a number of years ago, that's exactly what was going on. So he was trying to make a living. And that's how he made his living. He would do lectures and he would do podcasts and stuff like that. He selling DVDs and he was extremely impacted in his ability to make a living because of what was happening. Because of that contract, he was prohibited from making a lot of appearances. Now, I put the show up and I didn't receive a letter. Apparently other hosts did, but for some reason I did not. I don't know why I didn't get it. So that show stayed up. So he had a lot of issues. It went on for a long time, and I can say that in the conversations I had with Jordan offline, that it was very upsetting to him, and it put him in a very down state of mind. Sometimes he sounded a bit depressed, frankly, that he was going through this, and I don't think that he was able to see a light at the end of the tunnel. He had hired an attorney, and it was going through the court system, and then there was a point where he was just frankly out of funds. He didn't have any money, and so there was no way to pay for attorneys. And that stalled any kind of progress that he may have been making in the court system. And I did ask him going back about 4 years ago, because the shows we did were between 2014 and 2018. And between 2018 and his passing, we didn't have any dialogue, although I did think of him a lot. And it's funny, there were times when I said, look, I should reach out to him. But I had a lot of other stuff going on in my life, and so I wasn't doing as many shows as I had been doing in the past. And the things that were happening in my life are not bad things. It's just, it's just life. And you have to, every once in a while, reprioritize and put your energy and your focus someplace else. And then, if you can circle back and go back to podcasting and whatever. So I didn't have a chance to speak to him after 2018, but I believe what he told me, if I remember correctly, there was a conclusion to the legal issues, and the judge drew a line in the sand, and that line in the sand was a date. So anything before that date belonged to the people he contracted with. Anything after that date was his. But the problem was that the brunt of Jordan's content was with the other guys before that date, because that's when he was in his prime, and he was doing the lecture circuit and all of that. And so he got something out of it, but it wasn't what he was looking for. And I know that in conversations I had with him, there were times when I could tell he was very, very angry at the situation, and I'm sure that he wasn't happy with himself for not scrutinizing those contracts the way they should have been. I don't know why they weren't. I didn't go down that path with him because I could tell that he was not in a good frame of mind whenever the conversation came up. So I decided to leave well enough alone. There's no sense in bringing something up like that. It's a question I'm sure he's asked himself a million times over. So it doesn't help if Mike asks him something that he wants to kick himself for, right? That's the feeling I got, at least. So anyway, that's how that went. And then things did pick up for him. About 4 years ago, I remember I reached out to him. This is going back to about 2018. And it was on Skype, and he was in this office. And he was sitting behind a desk, and he was just beaming. And he was very, very happy. So I said, "Hey, Jordan, how are you doing?" He goes, "Doing pretty well, Mike." He said, I have a position now. I'm working for Gaia TV. And he explained to me that they were looking to produce and promote his content. And he was going to get a salary. So the days of struggling and trying to figure out how to scrape together a few bucks to live and to defend himself and all that was, I guess in his mind, had come to an end. And he died at 82. So if we go back 4 years, so he was what, 78 years old at that time? And he was feeling pretty good. Like I said, he had a big smile on his face, and I was very happy for him. And he explained to me also during that conversation that he had received support from Gaia, in which they had said if there's any other legal issues that they were going to help him out. So, yeah, so it was a feel-good time for Jordan. Now, I don't know what happened as far as Gaia producing the content and promoting and all that stuff. What happens sometimes is you're connected into people, and everybody knows this, right? This happens in life in general. And, you're talking to somebody and you're acquainted with them, and then there's a split. And not because anybody's angry with anybody. It's just because my focus went here, Jordan's went there. We can just, pick any group of people. And so there's a fork in the road. And sometimes what happens is you come around again, you circle back, and you reconnect, and other times you don't. And it's just life. That's what happens. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to reconnect with him over the last 4 years. And although there was a little voice in my head that was telling me at times, contact him and see how he's doing. He did have a heart attack going back a few years ago too. Obviously, he survived that. But he has left behind an amazing legacy. He really, really has. It's unbelievable, the information that he put out, his dedication to research and the truth, and all that goes with awakening the masses is amazing. Even though he would get upset that people weren't waking up. I remember a number of times he would be talking to me and he would say, "Mike, I've been doing this for 50 years and I'm not really seeing the rate and pace of awakening taking place." Yeah, there are people waking up, but I think that he was disheartened that a lot of people looked at his information as entertainment. They were entertained by it. It was interesting. And I don't mean entertainment in a derogatory way. They genuinely liked his information, but beyond listening to it, they didn't do anything with it. They didn't embrace it. They didn't, try to change their lives in any way. They just basically fell back into the matrix. And that bothered him a lot. And I said to him, look, Jordan, I understand what you're saying, but you have awakened so many people. And I used myself as an example. I said, you woke me up, and so there are people that were paying attention, and there are people that did change up the way they live their lives and the way that they communicate and speak truth because of the work that you put out there. So, he was like all of us. Sometimes we look at people of the status of a Jordan Maxwell, and we think that, they don't have the same feelings that we have, or they don't think the same thoughts that we have, especially with regard to what's going on in the world. And he used to always say, "Mike, if the people really knew how the world worked," and he used to always emphasize the word "really." And sometimes he would tell me, he says, good things aren't coming. And he would try to stay positive when he did his interviews and stuff like that. But when you spoke to him offline or with outtakes, he would show that side of him where he knew it was dark. He knew that what was happening and what was coming was evil. He knew that. And I remember asking him one time, I said, well, Jordan, what are you talking about? Like, what is going to happen? And he paused for a moment, and then he said, you know what? He says, I don't want to talk about it. He said, but it's not going to be good. And I'm going back now years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, when he and I had that conversation. And look at where we're at today. Today what's going on is evil personified. And many of us, thank God, see it and are doing something about it. And of course we have those that are completely lost and submerged in the matrix that are clueless. But I look at it as our job and our responsibility to continue to speak the truth and to communicate the truth and to try to wake up as many people as we possibly can, because you can't go down without a fight. You have to fight. And that is what Jordan was all about at the end of the day. You know, he had the same, like I said, feelings that we all have that are pursuing the truth and doing the research. Sometimes it gets a little depressing because you look around you and you think to yourself, like, is anybody listening? But that doesn't mean that you just throw in the towel. You have to keep going. And he did. He kept going. Right up to the day that he passed away, his head was still in the game. So I tip my hat to him. Okay, so that's it, folks. I just wanted to share some of my my interaction with Jordan Maxwell. Again, the playlist to the 4 shows that I did with him will be in the description box down below if you want to take a listen. And when I get time, I will go through the outtakes that I have to pick out some of the conversation that we had, some of the gems that I think a lot of you will appreciate. Okay, so with that, you guys have a great day, and we will talk soon.